Hello and welcome to In Your Ear Radio. I am your host, Latoya. So happy to be with you today. Thank you for joining me on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you guys so much. You know how we do in the beginning of the show, I have to go ahead and share. So just give me a few minutes to do that, and I'll give you all a few minutes to log on. I'm so excited to be with you today with our guests. We always have a lot to talk about, so we'll get to that as well. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and share this. So it's still a little chilly out here in Las Vegas. So, nothing like some of you guys experiencing the snow and all of that. So, not too bad. Just wear a light jacket and we're good out here. Thank you all for joining me. I see you guys joining me on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you. I see you, Pieces of She. Hey, I see you, Shanta. Thank you guys for joining us. And I'm just about to share. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I got the sharing done. All right. Again, thank you for joining me. I am your host, Latoya, In Your Ear Radio. It's always a pleasure to be with you and a blessing, considering everything that's going on here in our world. I mean, this is just amazing what we're going through. I feel like we're in a twilight zone, you guys. This is just the oddest thing ever. Okay, this COVID stuff is very bizarre. It is a very bizarre situation for us to be in. But nonetheless, for those of us who are still alive and kicking, peace and blessings to you. For those who, we've lost. It's unfortunate. We love and miss you all. My condolences to everyone whose heart is hurting today, because I know how hard it is to lose love. And if it has to be by COVID, that just makes as insult to injury. This didn't have to be the way it is right now, but it is. It is what it is, right? So again, we've been talking about the vaccine because right now people in the United States are getting the vaccine. It's being distributed in the nursing right now. I think the essential workers, like and doctors, are the first to receive it. The last in line, I think, are probably those who are not essential workers, just those who just might want to get the vaccine. But I don't know. I know some people who are excited about getting it, ready to get on with their lives and travel. And I know some people who are very skeptical. Either way, it is a personal choice. And I do say thank you. I appreciate those who are choosing to get the vaccine. We do need it. I think it's 80 to 90% of the US population to get the vaccine to help reduce the symptoms and keep people alive. Things we know about the vaccine are still coming into fruition as far as us understanding how effective it would be. For example, the vaccine is distributed with 2 shots. So you get one, and then I think a couple months later, you get number 2. And that would make your body have less severe symptoms, right? And they have not proven yet that it would reduce the contagiousness. So if you might get the vaccine, you still may be able to spread it to someone else. And for those who don't have the vaccine, may experience even more severe symptoms. So, the common symptoms right now that people are experiencing from the vaccine are headaches, a sore arm, and I think the other is extreme fatigue. But these are like symptoms that last less than a week, which is good. I remember having taking the shots back in the day for school, measles, all that stuff. And I remember my arm being sore. So I know what that experience is like. So I don't know. Are you guys getting the vaccine? What's the 411 on that? Also, the people are saying that, this vaccine, even though they're not sure about all the side effects, it can affect your DNA structure just by the way that you're exposed to it, going out in sunlight, and just a lot of different things coming about with this vaccine. So I don't know. But if you're experiencing a fever, sore arm, and headache, doctors are saying those are good signs, because that means that your body is combating this virus and being able to be strong and fight it, so that you are in the hospital on a respirator and whatnot. Y'all's president, because yes, he's still your president. He's hasn't said he's going to get the vaccine. I think the vice president did get the vaccine. And that's interesting to me. But one thing about this vaccine, though, that's interesting also to me is that the doctors are saying that we may have to take it annually for those of us who will be taking it. But with the measles shot, remember the measles and polio and chickenpox and all that we had to take vaccines as kids, even to enter into school, we only had to get that once. And doctors said one shot helped to eradicate the disease. So what happens in that case is that either you don't get the measles or the mumps or the chickenpox, or your symptoms are so severe that you die from it. And it's no longer contagious. So my question about this whole vaccination thing is I know some kids, even in the foster care system, for example, if you have children, some people aren't vaccinating their kids, but they want to be foster parents. And they're not allowed to do so because if their kids aren't vaccinated, and the foster kids they're saying that, that's a threat to the foster kids. But if these shots have eradicated this disease, then how is it, a danger to these foster kids? There's a lot of confusion. I understand why people are feeling the way they're feeling about it. So, it's crazy. You got people out here still acting up, saying that their civil rights are being violated because they have to wear a mask when they enter restaurants, and they get mad about it. Like, what planet are you living on, people? Like, no shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service. Like, if you don't want to wear a mask, you don't have to wear a mask, but don't think you can enter into public facilities and possibly contaminate other people because you're being defiant, whatever you're doing. So just, for all of you crazies out there who think that you should be able to go out and spread the COVID to people who don't want the COVID, and you think your civil rights are being violated, get your pen and paper and write this down. The 1964 Civil Rights Act does not protect against religious-based exemptions from not wearing a mask. So for those of you who may have religious-based exemptions for not getting the vaccine in some instances, so for example, in the military, that does not apply to wearing a mask. So take a note, just stay in the house if you do not want to wear a mask, okay? I don't like wearing it either. That's why I stay in the house a lot. Y'all see how light I'm getting? I used to be real dark. No, I'm just playing. Again, I'm so happy that you guys joined today. We do have a very special guest that'll be on shortly. I just wanted to get this rant out and just keep you guys up on current affairs. Your president, Trump, is now recommending $2,000 in the stimulus package. What y'all think about that? I like it, but I'm just saying, is it going to happen? If Georgia can do their thug thizzle, which I hope they can, and they gangsta out there, they listen. 2 days ago, over 1 million people had voted early in Georgia for the January 5th Senate runoff with Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. So I'm hoping that everybody is shooting for Warnock because he is a Democrat, and that would help to flip the Senate. Flipping the Senate means that we can get more bills passed because our interests will be supported in the Democrats over the Republican Party for those of us who have interests under the Democratic Party. So shout out to Georgia. Y'all are doing it. I cannot wait. I'm looking forward to the Senate being flipped. I hope that it happens. But the Senate right now, and here's the thing, they're sitting on the stimulus bill, right? They're sitting on it. People need money. People are unemployed. People, right, they need their businesses. They need to be able to pay their workers. It's a lot going on right now, but the Republicans and the Senate are sitting on this bill because they have certain issues that they need to be ironed out. And one of them is they are not willing to pass the stimulus unless companies have liability protection. So this means that people that are going into these workplaces, if they catch COVID, they can't sue their companies, the company that they work for. What do y'all think about that? I'm feeling some type of way about that. People are so, it's a lot to be said about that. I just don't understand it. It's just so much to be said about the people that we elect in office and how they represent the people. The majority of the people are not the rich. They're not the 1%. They're not the 10%. They're the rest of us. So what is going on? I just don't understand. This is just a big mess. So again, you guys, I'm just excited today because I have a very special guest joining us. And I just been looking forward to it all week. And I know that many of you have too. And, just for him to come on and tell his story and to, give us some insight and to share his perspective on, just reducing homicides in our community. I think it's very important that we have this discussion. And if there's any way that we can do that, Lord, let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about it. So I just wanted to thank him so much for joining us today and having this discussion, lending his time to us. So, without further ado, I just want to add him on. His name is Walter D. Smith. Okay, and just give you give you a little background on him. Okay, I'm getting tongue tied over here, you guys. Excuse me, but to give you a little background on Mr. Walter D. Smith, he was wrongly incarcerated for 11 years. Walter Smith was the first person to file a formal motion seeking DNA testing from prison, September 13th of 1988. He was denied access to the new forensic pathological testing 9 times over 8 years. Walter eventually got his break by and through the efforts of attorneys, and specifically WBNS 10 TV news anchor Jerry Revish. On December 6, 1996, Walter became the 38th person out of 280 exonerated and free from prison by way of DNA. So focused on continued education and the need for personal development, reformation, restoration, and rehabilitation, Walter pursued self-education in law, health, and fitness. So, he's doing that bodybuilding thing, keeping fit. I definitely want to talk to him about how he keeping slim and fit as, he's getting up there in age. His formal education consisted of drug and alcohol program, sociology, and associate's degree in business management from Wilmington College. Walter is also in possession of 2 professional and 3 amateur national bodybuilding titles. So he's doing it. As an inspirational speaker and professional bodybuilder, Walter has spoken before more than 2,000 audiences touring the country, sharing his against all odds and choices testimony presentations with incarcerated individuals, adolescents, middle school, and high school students, in addition to colleges, universities, churches, businesses, and other groups, organizations across America. So welcome, Mr. Walter D. Smith. Woo!
Thank you so much, Latoya. I'm honored, and thank you for the wonderful words that you identified me by. I haven't heard people say those things in a long time, and it actually makes me blush just a little bit. But I'm grateful to share this honor with you at this time.
Well, thank you for joining me. I'm definitely thankful for you joining me today. Listen, I read the book Street Soldiers, and I got a whole lot of questions, and we definitely can't, get to all of them in one session. So I know we're gonna have to do this again.
Yeah.
But the book is awesome. Street Soldiers. If you haven't read it, if you don't know about it, please get it. It's an awesome story. Let me tell you first offhand, Walter, I have lots of books. I order books all the time, but I haven't really been reading much. I kind of just got distracted, a lot of things personal going on in my life, and I'm just trying to get back on track to what I love to do, which is reading. And reading your book has put me back in focus. So I just want to just thank you for that, first of all, because it was an easy read. I was, focused. I mean, the whole time I've just enjoyed I was pinned to the book, reading your story. It's inspirational, insightful. And I just want to thank you because if nothing else, it got me back on track when it comes to reading. So I appreciate that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And I'm going to run to the back of what I hope to have been the last part to discuss about our adventure today. The solution to most of our problems is that simple. We don't read.
Yeah.
Period. And now we live in this high technological, fast-paced, too much technology, in my opinion, society. A lot of us that can be a lot more intelligent are becoming more mechanical because we have all this technology. You never go any place now where people are waiting around to pick up a magazine, but everybody's got that phone in their hand. And I can assure you, there's a lot more healthy information to read when we used to go to businesses where magazines were laying down than the stuff that we have our own choice to read now. And that's one of the problems that we have with the Black community. But reading will teach us anything we want to know and take us any place we want to go.
Yes, indeed. And that's one of the things I know you touched on in the book, talking about how we can deliver ourselves from the level of self-hate and not having the level of love for ourselves is reading. Reading is fundamental. And I definitely want to touch on that. But before we dig into the book, I just wanted to big that up because it's really, to me, it's a godsend because I really have been in a stuck place. So it's a big deal for me to be able to say that. So thank you so much. But how are you? And how is life treating you?
You know, I'm happy. I'm content. And contentment is the first thing you learn in prison. In prison, you adapt or you die. Any adversity in life, it doesn't matter whether we're free or incarcerated. If you do not adapt, you will die. You must
Yeah.
adapt. We have to adapt to the coronavirus. You were talking about the importance of wearing a mask. We have to adapt to these circumstances because now our lives depend upon it. Now, for me, and then it's all this isolation. See, I had to adapt to that when I first went to prison. I had to adapt to not being with my family on holidays, especially Thanksgiving and Christmas. My best friend in prison killed himself, suicide, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving one year. Thanksgiving is the time when most homicides are committed in prison because of the fact that we're not with our families. So for me, I had to become content in prison and sever the feelings that I had for being with my family for holidays, especially Thanksgiving and Christmas, which means what? I don't have a problem being by myself now due to coronavirus, due to the holidays.
Yes.
I'm okay. I don't have to be around people to have the big, wonderful turkey dinner because we had to learn how to adapt to being stricken from those things when we were incarcerated. So those are some of the first tenets that I developed when I got to prison because I had been through a lot of stuff. I took myself through $100,000 cocaine addiction. I did several armed robberies. I could not get drug treatment. I was very suicidal. When my partner killed himself, that made me stronger because he was the only person in the prison that I was in that had more time than me. So what we had to
Wow.
do in prison, we had to bond together to keep the wolves away from us, especially the children that come into prison only doing 4 or 5 months. Because you see, we're doing life on top of life, even though we were not sentenced to life, our
Hmm.
convictions were more demanding than if we had been sentenced with a life sentence in prison.
That's right. So this is easy breezy for you. You know, I was just
Mhm.
talking to one of my cousins, and she was saying that this is a hard time of year for her because she made the a professional choice to move away from home, away from all of her family to pursue her career. And I always say
Mhm.
this time of year, Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'm not really into them, and
Mhm.
it's rooted back in my childhood for one because we didn't have the best of those times during those holidays. And all I can remember, and even now, is people being sad, even talking about her moving away, living a good life, but feeling like she's missing out. And I'm like, you can do this any time of the year. You don't need these dates to be
Wow.
able to be around your family. Plan that time. So I like the fact that you know, you said you conditioned, you were conditioned. Unfortunately, it was prison that conditioned you. For me, I think it was circumstances as a child, but I think all of us need to condition ourselves not to allow people to decide what date we need to be happy and be amongst our family and celebrate each other, right?
It is so much that you've already opened up, and we have to do a series and a few series because now I'm going in a direction that I even anticipated. We are products of the Industrial Revolution. The education system was
Yes.
designed because of the Industrial Revolution. We have been Europeanized. My African name is Manijah Pianki, which means persevering Almighty One. I named my business after the 25th dynasty or the leader of the 25th dynasty of Egypt. Not going to get into all of that now, but again, we live in a Eurocentric mindset. We celebrate Christmas. We celebrate Thanksgiving. We celebrate Easter as a whole. I don't celebrate none of that stuff no more because I went to prison and I had to unlearn all the stuff that they put in me because even Christianity, and please bear with me, I'm not here to talk down on any religion because I've read the Holy Bible 17 times cover to cover. I've read the Quran 15 times cover to cover. And watch this. Every time I finish one, I go right back to the other. And I would do it until I die because it's just good stuff. It's good ways to read and exercise your brain. The better
Yes.
shape your brain is in, the better your body's going to be in. The better shape your body's in, the better shape your brain's going to be in. So we have to balance all of that. But let me get back on course. We live in a Eurocentric society. As soon as I got to prison, and here's the reason I'm so glad that you allowed me this time, because felons are ostracized, vilified, castigated, and neglected in our society just because we
Yes.
made one mistake. But a lot of us go to prison and we become conscious when we come back out here. I don't celebrate Christmas. Now, even before Christmas, I never bought a Christmas tree. I never taught my child or my son about Santa Claus. I remember I was a nosy baby growing up. So I'm not going to give all my credit to being in prison. But because I was nosy, one thing that I noticed, and I love my father, I come from a strong line of men in America. My dad was a strong man.
That's
But
right.
that man worked day and night, night and day to take care of his family, but he was always home around Christmas time. And then we had this picture of this fat white man on our front porch. So I'm nosy because dad's always working, but around Christmas we got to go to bed early. Well, I wonder why. Okay, well, I'm nosy. I go downstairs year after year after year and watch this man up all night putting our toys together. Then gonna tell me the Santa Claus brought him. Come on now.
Don't
So
give yourself no credit.
yeah, well, that was ingrained in me at a very young age. And I didn't check my dad on that, but as I got older, I put it in the category of commending him because he did everything that he could to make us happy, to make our home a happy home, based upon what he had been given. But because I was so nosy, I learned early that there was no such thing as Santa Claus. At a young age, I did not watch television because I didn't see people that looked like me. So then when I went to prison, I was able to unwind all of that stuff, go study some history. And that's why I mentioned the Industrial Revolution, because the education system was designed for us to go work in factories. The education system does not teach us how great our ancestors were. And that's the big problem with our people.
I think that is liberating to know where you come from, even from the level of biologically knowing who your mother and father are and their lineage. And when you talk about even further on the other continent, wherever we're from, that frees us. That gives us a sense of pride. That gives us a sense of, just authority, and it really it builds strength in us. So I think it empowers us, right? It empowers us. It does something to us. And, it's unfortunate, when you were telling your story and reading your book and saying that you got educated about, your ancestry in prison, I thought about Malcolm X, how he had to go into the system and learn about himself and be freed and liberated and come back and just be fruitful. He was so fruitful once he left that prison system. And I'm just so appreciative of that. I mean, even, reading his book, young men that I knew that were, involved in gangs and didn't have any leadership, me being a woman, not really knowing how to lead a man, but not wanting to lose this young man, I handed that book off to him because I needed him. I felt like if he read that book, he would be liberated and understand who he was as well. And reading Street Soldiers gives me that same inspiration. So I appreciate your book once again. I'm going to keep saying that.
Thank you.
Because the awesome thing about it is you said you wrote this book at a 6th grade level education, right?
Yes. And the reason for that, growing up again, I won't give prison all the credit because my parents were phenomenal. My mother made us read 1 hour every day.
Wow.
Ever since I can remember, we had to read 1 hour every day. Every day we had to read the newspaper. Now, growing up in the 60s, the newspaper was written on a 6th grade level. I learned that at a young age because mother made us read all the time. Okay. Most magazines and newspapers at least post technology, because a lot of diction and a lot of writings nowadays are not very coherent. You see a lot of typographical errors, poor language, I guess to say, or poor writing. Because everybody's rushing to get to the market. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Because of that rush to get everything to the market, because we live in this fast-paced society, we leave a lot to question. So going back to my mother making us read 1 hour a day, because again, after I got addicted to drugs, I went back to, okay, now how did I get here? Let me go back to the values that parents put into us. My mother would make us read, and a newspaper was written on a 6th grade level. In our elementary school, which was predominantly Black, matter of fact, our elementary school was 100% Black. We did not see white teachers until I got to middle school. But we had the newspaper donated newspapers and a call and post to the school, and they became part of our school curriculum. Because now we don't even do that with our children, because now children are not privy to up-to-date current events. They're not being educated about the processing of voting, the civics of voting, the Republican Party, the Congress, the Senate, how that stuff all breaks down.
Civics.
We're talking about that stuff. But if we had the newspaper, quote unquote, or version thereof, and you make that part of the curriculum, which I'm very, very big on, current events, because the babies can get in tune to that. It's exciting, as opposed to, again, the Eurocentric education that we got, that Columbus discovered America in 1492. Well, we have relics all down through New Mexico and Texas that show that Africans particularly were here but prior to Christ, the Common Era. But we don't teach that, you see. So those things are all important, and they keep the child interested. And if we can get them into that reading cycle, then when we start giving them more information, like taking them over to the continent, because that's very, very important. One of the main reasons that Black males particularly struggle so much in this land, because this is not our land. We're lost. And if we're not made aware of the greatness, because I was lost. And the reason that I was lost, because I thought I was intelligent. I set records with different companies before I went to prison. My background was in marketing, always made money. I run a business, a very successful business now. Pay my taxes. President don't, but I pay my taxes. But I just couldn't get on with a lot of things in our Eurocentric society, and it would just devastate me. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of Black men run to the alcohol. We want to marry you beautiful sisters, but we can't take care of you if we ain't got no job. And Black males have now been put beneath the bottom of the totem pole in this society. And I'm not a male chauvinist. I love my sisters, and please don't get it wrong. But now only thing that the media talks about is edifying Black women. And I'm all for that, but we have to balance that. Where are the Black men? And more importantly, Black men that have been in prison. Go back to Malcolm. Malcolm X got his publicity because of his extremism. And let me be clear on that.
Look, the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Absolutely. Black people did not edify Malcolm. White people edified Malcolm. And here's what happened. And see, these are the type of things that we need to teach in our schools. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. became successful because we were leaving the radio era, just entering the television era. The television era didn't even know anything about the ratings and all that. They were just coming into all of that and discovered it when they caught the pictures of the police in Alabama with the water hose, the fire hoses on the Black babies. That was evolution at its best. Yeah. It was evolution when Malcolm X came out calling white people devils. The cameras worked everywhere he went, and they saw that you put controversy first. And I did radio, TV radio. If it don't bleed, it don't lead. If it ain't murder and mayhem and chaos, it doesn't lead the news. So the more murder, the more chaos, Donald Trump, the more adversity that the media can put on, it draws people like a magnet. So I said that again to say it wasn't Black people that edified Malcolm. And it would have been nice if it were, but I'm in that situation now as it pertains to being a Black man, because we've been given a piece of that pie, but my own people will not even interview me. So I thank you, my sister, because it takes grassroots people like yourself to educate the community with people like me.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And it's my passion to whatever I can learn to share with my people. And if I can get people on that are smarter than me, that are, well-versed and understand and have the information, I definitely would like them to be on as well. So I appreciate you. This is a joint effort. What we're doing is for our people and definitely to improve ourselves for sure. I want to go back to something you said, because you were talking about the newspapers and you were comparing it to social media today. And I just don't want people to feel like, this is a dated conversation, because a lot of people aren't reading newspapers now. But before there was a law that required that journalists be held accountable for what they printed. And the newspaper was a resource, a trusted resource. So I understand where you're coming from. You say picking up that newspaper and read it versus social media, where you don't know what's true or what's false. You have to be smart enough to know where to go and find the data. So that's the big difference. And when you're being misled, then you can end up in the lion's den. So I definitely just wanted to, reiterate that, picking up that newspaper is a big deal and was a big deal, because journalists were held accountable for putting out facts and supposedly having, both perspectives, not just their opinion. It wasn't supposed to be opinionated. And so, picking up that newspaper is a big deal. Reading is definitely fundamental. Shout out to GB who's listening. He's enjoying the conversation. He says, grassroots, that's what it is. Independent media. Considering, again, reading the book, Street Soldiers, having your father in your life and having your mother in your life, you still were led astray. So even before you were wrongly convicted of rape, you were in jail, like you said, 2-time armed robbery. How did you get there? What got you there? No,
that's so interesting that you asked, because I did come from an extremely well-to-do background. My parents were well-to-do. We had a lot of love in our family. My dad was a very hard-working man. My mother took good care of us. We never had babysitters. My mother was not one of those mothers that allowed other neighbors to whip us. It wasn't going to happen. My mama didn't let nobody put their hands on us.
That's right.
we never ate at, McDonald's innovated in the mid 60s, but even when fast food evolved, We ate cooked meals every day, period. My mother got up and fixed us breakfast every day. We had to say our prayers every night. I also mentioned this in the book. My oldest brother was in the bathtub at 8 o'clock. I was in by 8:20. The baby was in by 8:40. At 9 o'clock, we better have our butts in bed and gone to sleep. We were all A students, all three of us. We didn't miss days from school. But here's what happened. Reality hit me in the face like it does so many Black men, particularly when you get around the 10th grade, you start seeing what this thing in America really is all about. No one taught me about racism per se. Now, after I went to prison and looked back, I could relate to a lot of things in regards to racism because, for instance, my people are from Shreveport, Louisiana. We lived in Kansas City, Missouri. And I remember when we take those trips to Louisiana, we always packed our food in the car. We would urinate in the cornfields. We would never ask to use restrooms. We had our own food. Dad would only stop long enough to get gas. I did not know that that was because of racism and we weren't allowed to use restrooms or what have you. You understand me? So for us to be raised and not have been educated as we were walking through that process, then when you get older and racism hits you, and I tell you, you made that come to my memory, and it may be in the book and I may have edited it out, but my first real lesson in racism was when I was applying. Oh yes, I had went to work for a receivables management firm, collection agency, but we called ourselves a receivables management firm because we would educate people on how to manage their receivables and how to make sure that people paid on time to keep the receivables from becoming delinquent. To get that job, one had to have a bachelor's degree and $5,000, and I had neither and became one of the top 3 salesmen. But here's where I got my truest lesson in racism, and it mortified me. I called the company and said, my name is Walter Smith with Intercontinental Cash Corporation. I'd like to come and speak to you all about your receivables management. Have you all had a problem with receivables coming in more than 90 days? Said, yes, we've been thinking about calling someone to come out and talk to us about that. Mr. Smith, my manager was just talking about it. When can you come? Well, ma'am, I couldn't see you until next week because I'm already booked up for the remainder of the week. Oh, we would be so glad if you come this week. Well, I'm going to call you back and let me see if I can move some things around. Fast forward. I went on and got the appointment. I walked in and she looked at me as if I was a ghost, but I did not know why.
You had no idea.
I had no idea. I'm a big Black man. I'm dressed real nice and I can sound real white because that's the way we were brought up. Okay. So she said, I said, well, I'm Walter Smith with Intercontinental Cash Corporation. She said, well, sir, let me speak to the owner real fast. I'll come back. And well, the owner said that now is just not a good time. Well, now I went through a lot to get here today, and I'd really appreciate it if he could afford me at least 7 minutes of his time, because I can guarantee you I'll make it worth your while. You said you had delinquent receivables. You said you had a lot of collectibles under 90 days. That's good stuff. I'd like to at least consult with you on that. Then I'll go back to the office and we can reset the schedule. Well, let me see what the owner says. And I'm taught to close. I'm not walking out now that I'm here because that's the way my white management taught me. Once you get your foot in the door, you don't leave until you get a check. So I'm going to keep closing until you kick me out. So finally, he got upset and came out because we went through that little game back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then he invited me into his office. And the first thing he asked me was, what school did I go to? I said, Central. He said, Central State. I said, no, Central High School. He said, I don't do business with people that don't have a college education. I said, well, sir, with all due respect, I can appreciate that, but I'm not here to talk about my education or yours. I'm here to help you with your receivables. Now, if you'd like to pull a few of them out, let's get this taken care of and I'll bounce right out of here and we can do this in another way. I irritated him. And he said, I don't do business with Black people. He said, you're not on the same level that I'm on. He said, come on over here with me. Look, you see that car out there? You got one of them? You got a BMW? I ain't saying nothing. This desk is made of all oak wood. And why would I do business with you, Black man? I can go to a white man and do the same thing that you're asking me to do right here. I did not know how to deal with that. I walked out and went back to my white managers and told them what had happened. They went out and closed the deal and sold the contract. And they did the same thing with Black people that wouldn't do business with me. But I did not know how to deal with that. I didn't even know that it was racism. But let me tell you, and here's something that's very important. And I'm going to hand it back to you, my sister, because this is very important. And that's why I had to tell that story. That's what so many Black men go through, because this ain't our country. This is not our land. And if we don't teach that, we have those things to deal with when we go out here. That when we want to marry you beautiful sisters, we want the wealth, we want the income so we can take good care of our families and not stress. But when you have to go out there and deal with racism and no one ever taught you what it was when you see it, you don't know what it is when you see it. So if you don't know what it is when you see it and receive it, how you going to know how to deal with it? And here's what we do. We medicate ourselves. We start drinking. My dad became an alcoholic. Him and his first cousin and another cousin were the only 3 blacks that worked in a company with 500 white people. And I learned more about this after my father died when I was in prison talking to my mother. No wonder the man turned into an alcoholic, Mom, because I know how many white jokes he had to listen to every day when he went to work.
Listen, racism is a disease, and we have to medicate, even if it's self-medicating, right? We have to do something to curb, take some of the edge off. Even if we don't recognize it as racism, we feel it in our chest, we feel it in our emotions, we feel it in our wallets, we feel it in our families, we feel it in the way that we deal with people day to day. So I definitely hear you. So, knowing that you were being rejected. Another thing you said talking white. Can you elaborate on that? What is talking white for the audience?
Good point. Well, what I do know is you can't go up in the place talking about, look here, man, we got to go and do this shit here, man. Come on now. We got to do this, man. This ain't how things really work, bro. You got to help a brother get this where it need to be, brother. I'll go back to saying we've been taught in a Eurocentric system. What else are we going to talk? We don't have a language that we brought from Africa. The only language we know is theirs because they stripped us of ours. So we have to indoctrinate every idiom of America in order to go to the next level. Because if we do not, you cannot take broken English in corporate America and advance yourself that way. That is for sure. And then when you come back into the hood, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was real good at doing both. He could go into a boardroom, he could go into a room with senators and governors and president, or he could go hang out in the barbershop in the hood in the streets and still kick it with his brethren, because that's what we have to do. Now, because you asked how I ended up getting addicted to cocaine, well, there was a lot of alcoholism in my family. And after I got to prison again, I understood and understand why there was so much alcoholism in our communities is because, and this is very important, so I don't want us to smooth over this. And it also holds hand in hand with being able to articulate well enough to make it in white America. Black men in particular, if we don't read, we can't talk right. And we have to talk right in order to make it in white America. Irregardless of what we may feel and what we may think, one thing I do know, Columbus, Ohio has the 2nd largest Somalian community in the United States. And Somalians first moved to Columbus, Ohio in 1994, 2 years before I come home from prison. They have now 13 grocery stores in Columbus, Ohio, 9 car dealerships last time I checked, and are constantly growing. And we don't have one grocery store in Columbus, Ohio.
And there was Black Wall Street at some time, right? Back in the day.
It was. Yes, we did. We had a Black Wall Street back in the day. But all of that again now, because of racism, they made sure they did away with all that. The Tulsa, Oklahoma burnout in 1941, if I'm not mistaken, because a black man allegedly looked at a white woman and they went and destroyed all the wealth of the black. That was the true Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But yes, Mount Vernon Avenue in Columbus, Ohio had one of the same. So again, when we don't fit in, because we have to learn their system, we have to put on the suit and tie because that's their uniform. That's not ours. We wore dashikis. We wore a different type of attire. A lot of Somalians have come to this country, and that's why I mentioned them in Columbus, Ohio. They have not conformed to some of these so-called norms because they brought their culture with them. So rather than me using the alcohol, because I saw all my uncles and all my neighbors and all the men around my dad that were alcoholic, I said, well, I'm not going to be an alcoholic. The cocaine got me.
Yeah. Like you said, we can't gloss over self-medicating. It could be alcoholism. It could be drug abuse. Reading your book again, Street Soldiers, you admitted that that's something that you had a lucrative business in drug sales, being a drug dealer before you became an addict. And I'm just, because you didn't have knowledge of yourself, do you think that's why you got along that route? From what I'm hearing is because you were being rejected by the corporations, you found a way, which is what a lot of our brothers and sisters do. We will make a way if there's a will. So, being in this drug game, did you feel any type of remorse or guilt for what you were doing?
Well, let me use a good example. Let's look at Jay-Z. Let's look at Russell Simmons. These are cats that did the same thing on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Look at some brothers off the West Coast, Snoop Dogg, a couple other cats. We look Suge Knight. Look at some of these cats. So the point that I'm making is they made it. Let's look at John F. Kennedy, the Kennedy family. The Kennedys made their wealth on selling bootleg liquor. That's how they made their wealth. A lot of people make their wealth doing things or bending the laws and breaking the laws. O'Hara Airport, the name O'Hara out of Chicago were former gangsters. There's a major entity in Columbus, Ohio that's bought up and they have the most palatial car dealerships in the city anymore. And when I did history on their family, they made money off the cocaine back in the 80s and the 90s. So, you know, there's a right way to do wrong. And if we do it right, then we make it. And I did right what I was doing in my business was marijuana. And the mistake that I made was when I tried to cross over and do the cocaine thing, you know, and that was because of people that are around me. Now, that further enhance what I'm saying to that degree, the greatest threat to the white male in America is the black male. We have that to deal with. And
that's why they keep their foot on the necks of the black man.
That's right. And that's another one that we can have a whole nother show on, because that's where we really woke up when we got to prison. See, I had to go to prison and learn and understand that the biggest threat to the white male is a black man. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Black penis anywhere, baby gonna be black.
Yeah.
And I debate that with a lot of people. So what's the biggest threat? See, they can screw our sisters.
Yeah, because initially you started off in marijuana, and like you said, when you drifted off into cocaine, that's when it got bad for you,
right?
Because obviously that's more lucrative. And we know how that was brought here through the government.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Oliver North. That was brought here to our country and put into our communities to disable us, you know, because like you said, the biggest threat to America is a black man. So while we were striving and being 2-parent households and raising our children, that was a threat in itself, you know, when you had the Black Panther Party movement and things of that nature. So something had to be put into the community to disable these people from being strong people, right? So I understand that so much, but we see what it's done to our community, even where it landed you, you know, because like you said, and I'll say this a lot, you know, you mentioned a lot of famous people, but even some that will remain nameless, that may be incarcerated or maybe have passed away or whatnot, have had a lucrative, been successful, not incarcerated, but have done well and turned that drug money, you know, into, you know, washed it and made it lucrative, you know, you know, these record labels and just different type of businesses, tech companies, investments and whatnot. So we know that our black men know how to be CEOs.
Right.
You know, they're not given the opportunity to do it the legal way in most instances because of the threat that the white man feels. But in the underworld, we've shown and proved, our black men have shown and proved that they can make it happen.
Well, I had my son when I was 18. His mother was 17 in high school, and she and I are best of friends to this day. Love my son to death and all of that. But when you start doing the things that nature promulgate, spread through us, having babies at a certain age, then you walk out again wanting to do everything right. I'm going to church. I'm trying to do everything right. I'm applying at the fire department, police department. I was processing to become an FBI agent, and I was going through the process of being hired as an FBI agent before I went back to the streets. But it just was taking so long. You have to pay your bills. And when you go to places and you begging people for a job, and you start seeing the only reason you're not getting hired is simply because of your color, you still got to pay your bills. So a lot of people ran numbers. I met some very influential people who put their babies through college because they ran numbers. We've always had to balance the streets with the good. So for black men, again, and I want to reiterate, this is one of the reasons we have the problems that we do, because I talk about it in the book. We end up fighting for the little scraps that we have access to. And also, if we aren't able to articulate ourselves, if we aren't able to express ourselves, if we aren't able to talk, and more importantly, understand the words that they use when we're in that circle, we will not make it. And the only thing that we can resort to is going back to the streets. And when we go back to the streets, you got to play by the rules of the streets.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you know, just being in the underworld and, you know, later on getting high off your own supply landed you.
That's correct.
In prison.
That's correct.
The armed robbery, just doing things that you would not have done if you'd been in your right state of mind.
Sure.
And then boom, you get hit with a rape accusation.
Correct. Well,
I mean,
the system certainly again is designed to destroy the black man. And again, if we can't get a job, because this is a capitalistic society, you have to have money in order to function. You go put babies on the planet, you got to make money. And I did any kind of work that I could. I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur. As a teenager, I always worked. I cut grass. I sold papers. I set records with companies. I sold insurance. I sold cars. I set records selling cars. I set records and selling other stuff. I became manager, but you still never got the promotions that you deserve because of your productivity. So again, every time you were promised or you go and you get hired and you find out, well, what does it take to become a manager with this company? Then they have the big meeting and because the big meeting is to talk about the persons that are going to get advanced. Well, I know that I've hit all the numbers that they told me to hit in management, and I exceeded and excelled in those numbers. So when we have the big meeting about the promotion to go open up the new office, I don't get the office. The person that I trained, the white guy who's my best friend, and he even came to me and felt real sorry for me, but he didn't deny that promotion when he got it. You understand me? So when the promotion came, so again, job after job after job after job after job, you go through that, you medicate yourself because again, you're getting kicked in the teeth when you put in the labor. I hit the numbers. I did the productivity. I did the production. I outsold everybody, including the manager over me. And I talk about that in my book. The dealership that I was working at, when I was driving a company car that I got arrested in, I went in there and outsold everybody on the team. The dealership closed at 6 o'clock on Saturdays. I'm still closing deals and selling cars until 11 o'clock at night. Cocaine had me going in, okay? But you have that type of talent. But if you're not fortunate enough to meet the kind of white people, because there are some good white people out there, if you're not fortunate enough to meet those good whites, and I'll talk about that even in our family, because we have some stuff that has happened in our family. My people done well, but my great-great-great-granddad he escaped from slavery to rescue his son who had been sold into slavery. But when he found out and found his son in slavery, an abolitionist had bought him and did not want him to go through the atrocities of the real slavery. And it was that white man that taught my great-great-great-grandfather how to process and manage land, discover stuff with your land. And to this day, my family still gets a check from what some white person did. If you're not fortunate enough to meet those kind of people, typically what's left for us is what's out there in the streets unless we become more educated.
That's awesome. Talking about just, reparations and getting, what do you call it? Dividends, as your grandfather did while he was living. You also, after you were exonerated, you were awarded a settlement, right?
Yes, a very meager settlement. Yeah. And the gamut is basically guys that are wrongfully incarcerated in California, New York, Illinois. They usually get the bigger money. The most amount of money that guys were getting when I was coming out before 911, because they went and changed a lot of laws after 911 to keep from having to pay all those settlements to those people whose loved ones got killed, and that affected us as well. But prior to 911, some guys would get the most that I knew of was 16 million for like 11 years of wrongful incarceration. Then there are states where guys don't get anything, particularly in the South. But for me, for 11 years, the state of Ohio only awarded me $250,000, of which I had to pay $67,000 back in taxes. And that was a slap in the face. And I wanted to keep fighting that, but I was tired. I learned the law and learned it very well and probably would have won. But again, I had to get out here and go to work. You have to make a choice. And that was a choice that I made. I had to get out here and go to work and try to, make up for it, because I couldn't sit around and cry with lost milk. And again, there are a lot of guys who didn't get that much money, and some of them really had a hard time trying to readjust out here because they did not invest in themselves when they were in prison. They moped and groped and were pathetic in prison. And I say that realistically because I lived with some of them. Had always wanted a pity party. Maybe better hold your head up right. And again, you've heard me use the word content. I became content. You look at your environment and you better learn how to deal with where you at. And I'm not going to say enjoy it, but you become content. If this is where I'm at, I'm going to make the most of it. And that's what I did when I was incarcerated. But yeah, the drug addiction. And I want to go back and touch on one more thing. I tried to get help, and I talk about that in the book. See, now they have drug courts because predominant people that are becoming addicted now are Caucasian. But when I come through the system with no juvenile record, had never been in any trouble, I also had tried to get treatment before I did the robbery. So when I couldn't get treatment, I couldn't stop. I just have to keep doing it. So when I finally got caught, I qualified for drug treatment pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 295104 in Ohio. But then they came with the rapes. See,
that's a whole nother conversation. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Exactly. Well, the white guy who was processed with me the same night on the robbery, and I did not want to hurt nobody. They arrested me with all the drug paraphernalia, but they destroyed that evidence. But the white guy come in and processed with me on a robbery. He had his robbery. They took away both of our guns, but his robbery was reduced from robbery to theft. So he got drug treatment. See, because that was the process. I didn't have the money, and he was bragging about how much money his people had. And I mean, that's just the way America is. But when I come into the system with no family, no one to advocate my interests, no one to plead my case for me, not only did they get me for the robberies, but because I had no family and everything like that, they said, well, we could use this guy for something else. Got all these groups that we didn't close the books on. So we're going to put them on this nigga. And that's
Listen, the 13th Amendment is real. We got to fill these prisons up, right?
Absolutely.
And if you don't value the black man, you know, then those are the ones that end up in there. So it's very, very unfortunate. You know, just to elaborate a little bit more on that before we move on from that. Was this part of the moratorium that Barack Obama put into effect for prisoners to ex-felons to get their money back? Or was this just a different civil suit?
I like that. Yeah, because that's how we met. Because that's how we met. When I called in on another show, that's one of the positive things that I could say about President Barack Obama. And I'm a preface before I get to that. I did not agree with a lot of things. I do not like Obamacare. It's a nightmare. Personally, I applied for it, never got in, applied for it, never got in, applied for it, it never was implemented. It was a nightmare. It's really a good thing. His intent was good at what he wanted to do for the country. But and if you can recall, it was a mess when they tried to even start it. None of the stuff worked on the internet. It was a huge mess. And I understand now a lot of those things have been worked out. The president did a lot of impressive things. He also let a lot of guys out of prison, more than all the presidents put together. He balanced out his position as well as one could do. But let me make another good point about President Barack Obama. And I love him too. Then I still will get to this piece that he did for me, myself personally. And this is very important, and I gotta say it. His mother was white, and his father was part of a program that came over from Africa by President Kennedy. And that's how his father come from Africa, ended up meeting this white woman, impregnating her and having Barack. And I say that because Barack has not gone through what our people have gone through as descendants of slavery. He doesn't feel. So what I'm saying is black people keep trying to hold him accountable for all our problems and pains. He can't do it because his DNA doesn't have that encoding that we have. His mother was white. His father come from a privileged part of Africa because that's how he was able to even get over here through John F. Kennedy to meet his mother. He grew up over here in Hawaii. So we as black people need to quit trying to hold that man's feet to the fire. It ain't in his DNA to fix our problems. We got to get somebody else to go to the White House at some point to deal with some of these things like reparation. But what President Barack Obama did, which is not part of the record, he made the federal government pay all of us the taxes that we paid on the money that we got. And that was sweet because mine was the oldest case, if not the oldest. It was in the top 3. I was one of the last ones that they found that was released on, with DNA and exonerated. And when they found me, I did not even believe what they were saying because they were asking me for all my personal information and saying, we need your social security, we need your birthday, we need your driver's license, we need it yesterday so we could get you all this money over here. And, it sounded like fraud to me, but I held my breath. I went on to send him to the attorney. He was from Detroit. He was talking hood, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't trust you. He said, bro, you need to get this to me because the deadline's in a couple of days. You get me these things and I can assure you, you're going to get paid. So what they did was not only did we get the money back, but with the interest and everything for the 13-ish years that I had been out here, turned out to be a nice lump sum of money.
Okay. Yeah. There's no amount of money that can repay you for spending 10 years of your life for being wrongly convicted in prison. So, I definitely understand that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was reading because there was a lot of different dates. But I know that you actually exonerated in November of 1996. It said that you were freed in December of 96. But I read that you were actually released on December 19th of 1996.
I was released on December 6th of 1996.
I wanted to celebrate because I was like, this is divine intervention. If this was the 19th and we having this show on the 19th, 34 years later, so okay.
Yes. No, it was December 6th of 19. It's been 24 years on December 6th that I walked out of the door of prison. Yes.
Yeah. So I definitely want to get into more because I know, some of the great things that you've been able to do. You said you left prison not bitter, but better. and your ambition was to, basically reduce the homicide rate in your hometown, or where you were, raised in Ohio. And you were able to do that successfully, not given the credit you deserve, but you were able to do that successfully with a good friend of yours and others, being street soldiers, going door to door, not, talking to people, talking face to face with gang members, even one of the leaders of the gang, right, in Ohio, and influencing them to change their lives. And I wanted to talk more about that because I would love to see the homicide rate reduce in our communities, period. And I'm just like, where do you start? I know you said reading is fundamental. Obviously, being on foot and going door to door, and people understanding that you're just not some politician, you a man, an ex-felon, and you understand their struggle. They listen to you. What is the key? What can we do right here and now? Where do we start with our young men to keep them from hurting each other and ending up in the system?
Credibility. Credibility is all it takes. And the solution is real simple. I was given a venue, a microphone with a lot of power, because radio is a lot of power. And looking back, I'm in the Kathy Hughes Radio 1 family. And what had happened, it was during the recession, because I went on radio in 06. As you know, the economy was starting to go down around 06, and it got real bad in 08. So they had to get rid of some of those full-time employees to trim out costs in running radio. And I didn't know all that when they called me, okay? I learned all that the hard way, because they were firing people's friends that had been in radio, and then they gave me a 2-hour slot and not paying me, you see, because they had to fill in that slot. So it was built under the auspices of doing community activism. So the mayor of Columbus, Ohio called me to a meeting because we had a black mayor, real good mayor. Everybody liked our mayor, and he was just good. I did a lot of the stuff that I did under his leadership. And when he left, all the leadership left. But he called me up and asked if I'd come to a symposium to talk about reducing the homicides. So I went to the symposium, and I had 7 minutes to speak, and they put me on radio. Now, keep in mind, a lot of my colleagues did not like me, but I didn't know why at the time, because they are firing people. And they looked at me as taking some of those people's time. I only got 2 hours, though, and it's a public service that I don't even get paid for. But the benefit, the mayor asked me to help reduce the homicides, and it was real simple. This is your host coming at you with the most on every Sunday night from 7 p.m. till 9. Street soldiers, brothers from the hood to the good, as we're going to do this thing and stop each other from killing each other. If a Negro owe you $1,000 for a dope deal that went bad, don't kill his punk ass. Get your money, man. That's how we did it. Credibility. Real simple. If we are given a platform, and what we do have a problem with collectively as men that have been incarcerated, because we are ostracized. We're vilified. We are removed from the energy in our communities. It doesn't matter how much good we do. And the people that hold us down the most are our own people, because they have the platforms to let us have the voice. And I get sick and tired, and it's happening, and it keeps on happening. It's the perpetual motion, over and over and over and over and over, saying the same thing, same thing, same thing. We have a new administration, and I have called every congressman, black and white, and said Walter Smith need to be at that table when we start talking about reforming the prison system. You think they're going to bring me to the table? So we keep doing the same thing over and over again. Now, how do we reduce the homicides? Real simple. A former gangster simply asked, period. That's how it was done. I get on the radio for 1 year. We came on a radio show in 2001. What we did, myself and another former felon, when the mayor gave us that position, and then we got on radio. I went and got my partner that had been incarcerated. And I can assure you, there's no other team in America where you got 2 felons hosting a radio show for 6 years like we did. And when we went and we did our research, because one of the things I learned in prison is to do research. I'm a master at it. That's what it takes to be a good lawyer. And we went back as far as we could to find the lowest number that we could find. So we went back to 2001, 80 homicides, 2002, 80. The next year there was 112, 89, 104 for 2 years. We went on the radio. So what we did, we found the lowest number, which was 80. And we set it as a goal to bring the homicides in under 80. We came in at 79. Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, we're telling the gangsters, don't kill nobody, man. Let's work out of them streets. Let's stop killing one another. We don't have to kill each other because stuff go wrong out here. And then we had a hotline. The brothers could call me on my hotline. I asked the mayor, don't have the police messing with the line. Well, they can't tap lines anyway, technically, but they do what they want to do. But I told the mayor, when we have meetings, don't have the police coming around taking guys' license plate numbers. We're working with these cats. And they worked with us on all that stuff, you see. So when we had a hotline and brothers would call and leave messages, say, man, we want to come on your radio show. We want to be a part of that. And when we come on the radio show, brother, they would come on. We had one brother. And I'm going to send you a clip where you can hear our radio song, our intro, because it was done by a bunch of rappers. And these guys were, most of them, street guys. And they all, since we talking to them now, you see, we're on the radio talking to them, and we had a rapper make all our music for us. Now all the rappers want to make music. They want to come in the studio. And we had one guy on one night, and he said, look, man, I got warrants on me right now, but we need to stop this killing. And me and my partner looking at each other like police gonna be waiting on him because he just told on himself on the radio. But the police were cool. They didn't even press the brother. If we are given a voice, if we are given an opportunity, and our Black leaders, when I came out of prison, what I prepared myself well for was the glass ceiling and racism. What I did not prepare myself for was the cement ceiling and classism. And it's the classism of Negroes that done made it. And I'm not going to mention no names. Just think of some of them that got some of these powerful positions of media. Because I done been at every last one of them. And why haven't they given me exposure? And I tell you why. They done made it. And if it don't bleed, it don't lead. A lot of them ain't trying to fix the problem because then they become irrelevant. It's just that simple. But while we was on the radio, that 1 year particularly, that was the only thing that we focused on was reducing the homicides. And we had brothers calling in on our line saying, look, man, I don't even carry my gun no more. Look, man, I ain't even going to shoot at nobody unless somebody shoot at me. So we get with them cats and say, well, brother, let's carry it a step further. Why don't you pick up a book and read it? Educate yourself, and let's take some of that money and launder that money and get you out of the streets. You understand me? Because no one ever retired CEO of these major corporations. It's very, very few. Let's put it that way. It's a small percentage that will make it, that may not go to prison or that may not get killed. But there's a higher percentage, 97% plus, that are going to go out the game one of those two ways: addiction, prison, or death.
And one thing I like about what you talked about in the book, Soldiers, is you were talking about with the radio show that you played, you talked obviously positive and uplifting to encourage the community to love on each other, but also you play, certain songs. You play Whitney Houston, and when I read you played Nas, I Know I Can. You was, you were made out the bar with that because I'm a Nas fan all day. I appreciate that. But I think that is so important. I think that's one of the things that are left out when we talk about healing our community and having pride and not having hate towards one another. Is the music that we listen to. And when you talk about how the Black community doesn't support people who are trying to reverse these statistics, some of that has to do with how we contribute with the music. The stuff that we listen to nowadays is happening in real time when people are talking about killing each other and sleeping around and just disrespecting each other and just self-hate. Like, I can't go to a concert if it's a Jeezy or a Gucci concert, because I know them lyrics are going to get people pumped up. You mix that with liquor and people who already got issues and might, be from a different area, and other people are there in a different area, versus at a Frankie Beverly and Mays, the coldest thug is going to be in there just in his linen, hugging and sipping Hennessy, and it's not going to be any beef, right? So I think that's so important, and we need to, that's one of the ways that we can, help heal our community and take that anger and animosity out of our hearts is by not promoting it with the music that we play on the radio. For the powers that be that have that control, I think that is, super important. And I know another thing that you elaborated on was that there's a lot of self-hate. You don't think that our men in general, specifically speaking, don't have love for themselves, and there's a lot of self-hate, and that's one of the reasons why we fight against each other. And then you talked about how, specifically, although you did bring up racism and religion, that you don't really like to talk about it because then it divides people, right? Sure. But we know that we can't shy away from the fact that racism is just this cultural condition that we have helps us to dislike each other, to hate what we see in the mirror. I mean, even if, think about it on a level outside of, violence and homicide, a woman cannot like herself, be beautiful. As a young girl, I got teased about having big lips. Now everybody's putting collagen. So I could have grew up hating my lips, but, luckily I had a mother that, definitely made me know that I was definitely Miss America in the making.
Yes.
But you can grow up hating yourself because society has said that that's bad. So when our young men are seeing on TV how policemen are just gunning us down and wasting our lives and just getting away with it, and you hear the type of music, how we're talking about how we would just easily waste each other's lives, how what do you expect? Well, how do you expect people to turn themselves around? Because obviously you're not doing your radio anymore with the enthusiastic music and messages and pumping Nas. I know I can be what I want to be. If I work hard at it, I'll be where I want to be. What do we do? How do we get these people to understand that they need to censor this music to help us?
A lot is packed into that. We have a complete 360. We can't fix things with 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 180. That's one of my philosophical theories to most of the problems in our society, because I study universal law, and that's God's law. God's numbers are 4 and 3s, 4s and 3s. God's numbers are 4s. That's where the cross.
I see 4 and 3 all the time. I wake up in the middle of the night and the time always has a 4 and a 3 in it. I swear to you.
Yeah. No, those are God's numbers. The planet is 70% water. Our bodies are 70% of water. We're derivatives of the water. We're derivatives of the 4 major elements of the planet, and there are 4 sets of elements of the planet. And I'm not going to get into all of that, but we studied all that in prison. They don't teach this stuff in high school. So you're right. The problem is monumental. It's not a simple solution. But what I do know is this: out of the 360 degrees, if we do not allow some of us that have been through the storm to be part of the solution, we'll never fix it. And America does not open the door for me and people like me to be part of the solution. Should be sitting right up there at the White House when they start talking about people on cabinets and all that stuff and fixing problems. Do not have a discussion about reform, prison reform, without having one of us or several of us that have been in prison at the table, because you don't know nothing about what goes on in that places. You do not know what it's like to go through the judicial system and stand before the courts with them lying on you and saying you're a rapist. You don't know what it's like to be in being accused of being a rapist. I never saw any of these 3 white women until they appeared in court. My heart hurted and bled for them, because it hurt me to my heart to hear what they went through. And it hurt me more to know that I wasn't the one that did it to them, but the system is making them believe that I'm the one that did these things to them. So when we've called to fix the problem, if we don't balance it out, because the planet is on a tilt, 70% tilt. And if it tilts either way, the wrong way, which is why we have this problem with climate warming, etc., because it's out of balance. And that's why we have these extremes in our weather, because God's numbers are 70. It's on a 70% tilt, you see. Same thing with our life. It's a very, very fine line, is the point that I'm trying to make. We have to become part of the game. And here's what we have to do. We have to start with the babies at the middle school level. I spoke in more than 500 middle schools. And when I finished my presentation, and I can't do it alone, which is why I wrote the book. I'm gonna get somewhere with this, but I've spoken over 500 middle schools. And when Mr. Smith gets done with his presentations, I'd ask the babies in middle school, how many of you gonna smoke cigarettes after hearing Mr. Smith's presentation? They raise your hand. I never had one baby raise their hand when I got done speaking. When Mr. Smith get done doing his presentation today, because 70% of our babies have already experimented with alcohol, cigarettes, and marijuana in middle school. When I get done doing my presentation, how many are gonna smoke marijuana after hearing Mr. Smith speak? They ain't never had one child raise their hand in middle school. Walter Smith can only do so much, but we have to start in the schools. We need to change the curriculum. We need to quit talking about stuff that's not prevalent in our society anymore. We need to quit lying to babies, telling them about people that didn't do all the things that we've lied about in some of these schools, you see. So we start in the school. We start an aggressive program, and I can write programs because I am a writer, and I have written programs that can be implemented. And then what we need, bear with me, and sister, this is the main thing that we could probably make some footing on. I'm okay. I run a business where I don't employ nobody, because I don't, but we have a team of about approximately 10 people, and about 4 of them are going to make 6 figures this year. Been a business in my life. Okay. So I'm okay. However, I can't do it alone. I have a book Now, we had all that money that came down after the George Floyd murder. I can't get to LeBron James or Michael Jordan. And 90% of that money going to go to the brothers with the cufflinks on, with the degrees that drive the BMWs. It'll never get to nobody like me, and they're going to do what they always do with the money. It'll never get to the people that really need it. And that's where a lot of that money is going to go. So what we need is somebody to get behind Street Soldier, the book. And it needs to be in every middle school in America to start with. The book is written for that purpose. That's why we wrote it on the 6th grade level. And something else you may have noticed, and maybe you didn't. Never once did I say anything about any sex in that book. Never once did I use any hard, profane language in that book. I told my whole story and sidestepped all that stuff, because if a child read this book cover to cover, I can assure you that that child will be impacted. And if he's given credit for reading that book cover to cover, for sure that child's going to benefit from it. So we need a team of people. Somebody listening now that can get me in front of LeBron James, I'll sell him on the book. You handing out money. Michael Jordan, he's handing out money. I tried every way that I could to get to them cats. Can't get to them, though. And it's sad that, and it's the same thing. It's the people at the top that will get to the table. It's the people that got to sit down with Barack Obama, who's supposed to bring meat, just like W.E.B. Du Bois said. The talented 10th are supposed to look after the other 90% of us. These Negroes that made it out here don't give a damn about us. And if we don't fix that problem, and I'm going to use another good example, I love them just like I love my brother, but I didn't get along with my brothers all the time. I love them anyway, just like a lot of the black leaders who get all the attention out here and don't do a damn thing for our people. And in private, I will discuss who those people are. And it's sad that they constantly get the calls to go sit down with these political people. And then again, just like another one of the great leaders has said, it's called a perpetual motion, Vernon Johns, who was the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church before Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. went in. And he was the one that said, give a Negro a Cadillac and I'll show you what a perpetual motion looks like. Because we keep doing the same stupid thing over and over and over, and we never get to fix the problem. So we start with the middle school babies. That's when they're still palatable.
Yes, I agree.
Before they start using the drugs and the alcohol. We teach them what it's like in the book. I also give the solution to racism in the book. Racism won't go nowhere in America until white people say so. We don't have the power to get rid of racism. The only thing that we can do is deal with it, adapt to it, and try to find our way through life dealing with it. And once we do that, we need to become more entrepreneurial. I stepped out of prison as an entrepreneur. I went into prison as an entrepreneur. I'm running a business out here, and I get tired of people that get their degrees and go to college, and I'm tired of people that we pay taxes to get in the White House and make all these decisions for us, and they live lavish lifestyles. They make enough money to make investments. Then you have those of us that are proven that we're entrepreneur, proven that we know how to win against odds, proven that we know how to deal with adversity, because they've been given everything almost with a silver spoon in their mouth, because they get paid on taxpayers' money. They're not entrepreneurs. So we need to have a better balance of people. And then we start with the babies, and now we go into the prison. Here's another good one for you. And I brought this one out here in the community. Everybody used to talk about re-entry, but why don't we talk about pre-entry? The work starts at the beginning. And here's one of the things that I benefited from, and this is one of the things that we need to change in the schools. For instance, I even give a solution for the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't teach unity in our schools. All that America has done is teach division. We stop prayer in school because it offends somebody. We stop saying the Pledge of Allegiance because it offends somebody. We stop doing this because it offends somebody. We need to come up with a mechanism to bring people together. So what I did was I took God out of the Pledge of Allegiance and put another word in, because we should have something to bring us all together, because it wasn't until I went to prison that I sat in a circle with other men hurting just like me, and I was able to discuss my pain with about 12 other brothers, and brothers start crying because we all in pain. And then we get up and hug each other and say, I love you, man. Because if I don't say I love you, I'll kill you. And if we don't teach love in America, we keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I just gave you the whole synopsis from the middle school. We don't need to touch babies till they get to middle school, and all the way into the penal system, where we can get in a circle as men, and we can talk each other down like the Muslims. When I sat down to eat a bunch of pork one day, and them brothers walked down on me, and all my gangster came out, because if you don't get away from me, I'm getting ready to eat this pig. We're going to be fighting over this pig. But they taught me what trigonosis was in prison, and that's what got me off the pig. Then another brother gave me the Holy Quran. But when they came to ask me to change my name, and then I started studying a little bit of history, well, I found out my own people were capturing us, putting us in slavery, and most of them was Muslim. So I don't have a Muslim name. I have an African name. It's a lot that goes into all of that.
You know, that's how I know for sure this is not the end. We have so much to unpack, and I got a long list. It's just so much in your book that, you know, you can just pick apart and just have one segment of a show about, you know, all the information and just insight and just your life and just your experience. Everything we can just pick apart, unpack, and break down. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, you know, even for me, even some of the fun facts. I liked reading that you were also part of a church and you lent your acting skills to theater, Raven Son, the modern day crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Like, these stories are important because the perception is that, you know, Black men and women that get caught up in the criminal system, be guilty or innocent, they paint a picture of them as bad people, like they just don't have any heart, any humanity, any talent, any intelligence. And here you are, you were skilled in being a good sales guy, but you also had your acting skills, a great bodybuilder. You won some awards, and you did some boxing. I know you didn't like it so much, but I do like the fact that you say that boxing is a good way to keep our boys off the street. And so I made a mental note of that. I put a pin in that because I'm always thinking of things that we can do in the community to help each other. Just stay distracted from all of the things that people want us to be conditioned to be focused on, which are negative.
Here's one thing that sister, you deep, because when I was doing interviews regularly and a few that I've got with the book, people don't read. I mean, you read the book and that's why I'm smiling. I mean, the acting and everything. It's amazing that you say that. But these are the things that we need. We need drama classes in school. We need here's the main problem in the education system. The main problem in the education system. They've taken physical fitness out. Black boys, men, boys, males need physical activity. We can't sit still. We got to do something. And if we don't do something, it affects us mentally. So the system needs to go back and get some of those antiquated things. In addition to that, if the teachers got to go out and participate, they won't be fat. And I got to say it because we got so much obesity in our community. But the babies need physical activity. They need to burn off that energy. And especially males, we take them and set them in this antiquated classroom or setting. And the first thing that I would do if we were to restructure the classroom is we get rid of those desks where we're lined up and not being able to communicate with somebody unless they were on either side of us. And we need, if not a whole circle, an oval circle. Because if we sit in a circle, which we learned when I went to prison, when we got to prison, and by the way, guys, most guys don't deal with homosexuality. A lot of guys, I never met a genius until I got to prison, and I met 4 of them. The guy who encouraged me to study law was a genius. He got out of Ohio. He's the first person to get out of prison in Ohio, passed the bar, and is a practicing attorney to this day in Columbus, Ohio. The news don't never talk about those of us that come out and do exceptionally well in the community. The only thing that you hear from the news is that we are the vultures and the villains. And here's another good one. It kills me when a news story come on and they say that person, this is their first crime. And this is the one I like to do when I'm speaking. My mama, when she raised me when I was like, oh, my baby gonna be a fine little dope dealer when he get bigger. I know that's what my baby gonna do. And then when he graduate from selling dope, he gonna be a dope addict. That's what my baby gonna do. And then when he get enough of that, he gonna go out and rob some people. My parents didn't raise me to do that. Society forms us, and I take full responsibility. But if we're not careful and the society don't put the blocks in place for us to not fall, when we fall, we can get back up, then we're going to all keep going into the penal system because we have the worst prison system of all industrial societies in the world. And if we don't start doing something about it, it's only going to keep getting worse, my sister. And thank you.
And what you're saying, talking about indoctrination and cultivation. One of the quotes in your book is, the body cannot go where the mind has not gone first. That's so right. Your mother's rocking you and telling you opposite of what you said, you're going to be you're going to be one of the influential men in this world. And putting that in your mind so that you understand, you can envision that, then you can take that vessel and go and manifest So
And you said this because again, you're making all these things come back to mind. My mom, my dad say, son, you can do and be anything you want to be. All you got to do is believe in yourself. I mean, that's just coming from dad who was just a hardworking man. So you're right. After I got off track, I went back and grasped all those things. And there was something else that you said earlier that reminded me of one of my mother's favorite quotes. But you're right. And then since we have such a high absence of fathers, because coming from the 50s into the 60s, 70% of the homes had males in them. Well, coming out of the 80s going into 2000, 70% of the homes don't have males in them. And we have to balance that out. There's a favorite story that was told, and I got to find it, but I'll paraphrase, where they took the young bulls, the young calf elephants, and put them with rhinoceros in Africa. So the young juvenile elephants were killing the rhinoceros, and they couldn't figure out what to do to stop the young elephants from killing the rhinoceros. And then finally, one of the Africans said, go get a couple of the old bulls and bring them in, the old elephants, and bring them in. One of the problems, and I say this as nicely as I can, I hate hearing media, because every time we had these things happen like George Floyd and all of that, people say we got to let the young generation lead. Yeah, we do have to let the young generation lead, but we got to keep a balance of the 360. Let the baby get out there, but we should, if we're going to do it right, we have to have, and I wear this beard proudly, the white beard. Number one, it represents from my brother who got killed in 79, which is when I started dealing with the homicide thing 35 years ago. I said I was going to do everything that I could to help another brother not kill another brother, because my brother got killed. And there's so many brothers that I knew who never saw one gray hair grow in their face. Well, I'm old enough now to proudly wear my own white beard. You understand? So when our young people get together and they get that microphone and get to go on television, then they won't be saying things like defund the police, because that hurt us politically. No, we don't want to defund. We want to refund. We want to refund where some of that money go to. Give it to some of us to get in the streets. And here's another thing that we need to do. I'm on a roll now, sister. We just had a white cop kill a black man in Columbus, Ohio. And this is good stuff right here. Why do we not get rid of all these white police in our communities? You understand? Black men, black people represent 24% of the Columbus community. And then we only represent 5% of the police force. Now, I'm not saying don't have police in our communities, but I travel all over the country. I've been in Italian communities. I've been in Jewish communities. I've been in Chinese communities. I've been in Irish communities. I've been in all these communities and ain't seen a black cop yet, period. And
well, look at the history of it, even when policing took effect. I mean, we can go back to Watchmen, where they used black men and women to make sure that those who were enslaved got caught. They reported them. Then we move back, go into the 1900s, where even when black men and men were allowed to be policemen, they were not even allowed to arrest white men.
Exactly right. Well, at minimum, what we need to do, let them go police the white community. Let's take some of those funds and bring it back into some of us, because with the police, and when I speak, I tell children, so what do you think? Because I love you, brother, especially when I was taking care of my demented mother and my granddaughter and my daughters in my home. If I come home and see a brother crawling in my house, what am I going to do? Say, brother, I'm going to spare you because you broke in my house? No, I'm going to do you because you ain't got no business breaking in my house. Then I'm going to call the police. But when we call the police, we cannot fear that they're going to come and kill you. You understand? I just want them to protect me and my property from those of us that break the law. And how do we do that? We let them white cops go work in their communities, and then we train up our black officers and change the rules too, by the way, because some of us that have been felons and have exemplary records since I've been out for 25 plus years, I'll go be a cop. You understand me? But the laws are so jacked up. We ain't supposed to never own guns, and we ain't supposed to never be able to protect ourselves because we made adolescent decisions. There's another problem. They need to change a lot of stuff out here. But what we want to do is, in my opinion, is don't necessarily want to defund the cops. We want to reappropriate the funding and do more interactive. And people have said this, they want to get on the front end and do more programming. And I'm all for that. But we need to, and this is the reason why we need the wisdom with the children, because when we get out there and keep saying stuff the wrong way, they're going to always use it against us. And those
Yes,
of us that can think through this stuff can help them shape that stuff better and put it out there, because we could do a whole lot with making sure that the black cops, when we do call them, because a thug just broke into my neighbor's house and I saw him when he came, when I call the police, I want them to capture him. And unless that person puts or threatens that officer with bodily harm of some sort, we want them to administer the law to save lives and preserve life first.
You know, this revolution is a marathon, and we definitely need, you know, the wisdom from our ancestors channeled in, and then we need the wisdom from those who have come before us, and to pass that baton and move it along from generation to generation. That's very necessary. We are all needed. So I definitely agree with that. Just channeling back to the whole defund the police. You spoke on it. That's deep. You have to keep in mind that those who came up with this slogan are not part of our political system. They are not legislators. They are not senators. They're not congressmen, mayors. These are just young people, because it's always been young people during Martin Luther King era, Malcolm X era. Prior to that, it's always been the young people, Nat Turner, that were revolting and spoke up and spoke out. And so this is what they came up with. And my thing is, because I had a conversation about this on a show prior, it doesn't matter what we say. We got people beefing with us about saying Black Lives Matter. Like, we should be saying that our lives matter. When you look at the statistics and we want to focus on a particular group of people, you know, let's not forget that we didn't make up race. Race was a made up construct to keep us suppressed so that it would be okay with white people, men and women, to look down on us. So, okay, we're Black. And now we look at the statistics, how we are disproportionately always in the negative zone. And now we're saying, hey, we don't want to live like this. Black Lives Matter. We're tax-paying citizens. We built this country. We're contributing citizens to this country. And people are saying all lives matter. Well, that's not, we're just focusing. It's just like when you talk about cancer, ain't nobody coming back and saying, oh, well, we're talking about breast cancer over here. And somebody goes, oh, brain cancer matters too. You know, it's just so petty. So when they say defund the police, and then you break it down to me so I understand what you mean, which is one of the things which you said, Walter, is that just disseminating these funds, not padding the pockets of these police officers who have a license to kill and are not held accountable. They should be held at a higher accountability level than even a citizen, because they have a license to kill. Like, if you mess up, you get triple the time that a citizen would get. So I don't even entertain when people come and say we need to change the term. And I respect your point of view, because I understand that it is triggering, because it does sound like we're trying to, you know, unemploy people, if that's a real word, instead of trying to make it better. But you have to read. That goes all the way back to the beginning of this conversation. If you put money in a book, I bet you somebody wouldn't find it. You know what I'm saying? Read and find out what defund the police is about. And that's one of the things. Using that money to allocate it to people with mental health professionals, so that you're not pulling up with a gun when it's an issue with someone who's having a mental health crisis, when it's a standoff, where there's a hostage situation. There's just so many different ways that we can handle situations than coming in with a gun. Remember, we are the taxpayers, right? We pay for these people to come in and protect our community, not to put us in a fear zone, or we're scared to call them because we're having a situation where we can't handle it and somebody might get killed or go to jail and have a fine, and they can't get out of jail and lose their jobs. And the story goes on and on and on. So when it comes to that defund the police topic, I think people just use that to be able to distract from what we are saying.
Sure.
No matter what Black people say, somebody's going to have something negative to say about it. And the Republican Party knows how to spin things. I'm not about a party, but I look at patterns, and I notice patterns, and the Republican Party is good at spinning things. And they spin this to make it look like, you know, we hate the police. I have police officers in my family. I have a police, one of my cousins that, you know, lost use of her, you know, was maimed. She lost use of her arm while on duty being a police officer. I have a relative, I have an uncle that died at the hands of police brutality. I can see all perspectives of it. I respect those who stand up, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't be pulling up to somebody's, you know, crime zone and trying to save them. I'm not that tough, you know, that's not me. So I salute men and women who sign up and are courageous enough to be able to protect their community, but not to instill fear and bully us. And that's what's happening. We're having talks with our boys about leaving the house, how to sit, how to talk, you know, what you say, talk white and look a certain way when white parents aren't having that same conversation. So I understand the term may be triggering and maybe not the best message, but we're not trying to appease these people who don't care about what we're talking about anyway. Those who know what we're talking about and open up a book and read and see the details of what defund the police, what their demands are, then they'll understand. It's not about the title. It's about justice, freedom, and equality. I just have that's my rant.
And even as you can see now, it's a very, very sensitive issue. And what we have to be able to do is balance everything out. Again, that's why I like using the 360. We have to proportionately balance things out. And that's where we need the table. Everybody need to be represented. Over in Africa, the griot is the elder male in the tribe. That's what we come from. And the children are raised to respect the griot. And you always recognize the eldest person. And some community functions practice those things in the community to respect the elders, because got 12 years on you, might know a little bit something about that you don't know. Got 25, may know a little bit about something about that you don't know. But because we know that these people out here waiting to see us say the wrong thing, or they can twist what we say. For those reasons, these are all the things that need to be incorporated by balancing. We're out of balance. Just like we know that a lot of people, when we're out protesting, there are people that are coming in and getting involved maliciously to set the fires and to make it look worse than what things are really what they are. But what we need to do is have that balance where we can change the language a little bit so we don't have to spend our time fighting those elements, because it takes the focus off the bigger picture. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to make sure that we have the elders be a part of things. I would not have the successes that I have as a bodybuilder if I were not smart enough. Something I learned from reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, one of the best sellers of all time. Something I read when I was a teenager. I read the book at a very young age. So when I got to prison, I remembered it. It said, always have 4 people that you can pick from. And they're, again, God's 4s. And I can go all day on those. Earth, wind, fire, water, spring, summer, fall, winter, northeast, southwest, hot, wet, cold, dry. Those are the 4 fours of the major elements of the planet. If one of those things is out of balance, it causes and wreak havoc on the rest of us. And it's the same thing. And I want to go back and reiterate it, because I want our children to be great leaders like Malcolm and Martin. But all our babies are not going to be Malcolm and Martin. So what we have to do is we have to better work together. And when we get out here, we have to be able to have a better balance, because I can afford to stand back on the side. There are a lot of things that I don't have the gumption to do anymore because I've gotten older. And that's the way it should be. We should protect those elders. In military, you protect the generals, the big decision makers and the rightful decision makers. You put the young broncs on the front line to get out there and fight. Then you have another layer of intellectuals, and then you have more intellectuals on the back. So if we don't work to balance those things out, we will continually have anarchy.
I hear you.
Continually have disruption. We will continually have these extremes where we're spending all of our time arguing over the semantics.
That's why I say not even worry about the semantics. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's why I'm saying what we say. When Malcolm was talking about human rights, that was radical. When Martin Luther King was talking about civil rights, that was radical. When women were talking about women's rights, that was radical. It doesn't matter what you say. It's about what your intentions are. And if they're fearful of having the same level of equality that they have, then it's always, they're going to spin it. So, and
again, I got to that point because, again, there has to be, the main thing is when we are out of balance. And if we can just get in a better balance, and especially if we're going to fix these brothers out here killing one another, we can start with that. We got to have a better balance of the information that's to deal with it. And what I know for that reason is, and again, I know I reached out for the whole thing about the policing issue. We need funding because, again, I think I have a lovely home, and I don't want to come home and somebody done broke in. And if somebody does break in, I'm going to call the police, because for insurance to get involved in all that, you got to have police report, got to call police. Then I got to hope that they don't shoot me when they come to my house, but I'm going to call them, you see.
And that's why they want to defund it. We got
to find ways to balance all this out. So then if we could get more work in on the front end, because police are reactionary and treat symptoms. We need to invest some of that money to treat causes. And the causes are when children are accosted by law. And here's another thing to learn with prison. First thing you do when police walk up on you, shut the hell up. You cannot argue your case on the street. They are trained to kill. You get to say something one time. And this is coming from a former felon, by the way. See, because I'm here to breathe right now because they had me down on the ground with 1 foot on my neck, 1 foot on my ankle, one on my wrist. Nigga, you move one muscle, will blow your brains out. And I'm here to talk about it.
And Mr. Watson, let me, if you don't mind, what do you say to Tamir Rice? What do you say to anyone who was not saying anything?
There's nothing that I can say because they're going to kill us. Well, no, and again, I'm glad you said that. Some of them are going to kill us anyway.
Doesn't matter what we
kill us anyway, and there's nothing that we can do if they're destined to kill you. You walk out your door, and it's your day that they're gonna hang you. They're gonna hang you. Ain't nothing you can say to that. And that's why, for me, let's get them out of our community. Now that I will say to that, get their white asses out of our community.
You're talking my language now. We don't need
because they're trained. They're trained to kill, and their training is reactionary. Other words, every black man is a threat to you, white man, and they put that power on your hip. And when they come into our community with all that power, we are powerless because we don't have the same equality to fight them back when we have that. But for those of us like myself, because I could have been one that, and I was wrong, there are a lot of us that are not wrong. And for that reason, again, we need to get them out of our community. Let them go police their communities and let us take some of that funding and train our people on how to deal with that. Because again, they are trained to see us only as the enemy. And Aubrey, they did the same thing with this brother because I'm a runner. I've jogged in my community. And when I built my home, a police pulled up against me one morning, and I'm out training, get ready for a contest, and said that they had people stealing refrigerators and stoves out of some of the new homes. I said, ma'am, does it look like I'm carrying a refrigerator? Does it look like I'm carrying a stove? I'm out here exercising. So these things will happen because let's take them out of our community. We don't have enough people saying that. All we keep saying is train them better, train them better, train them better, train them better. So to minimize some of that, because some of our black cops are going to probably do the same thing too, because it's an emotional thing that happens when you're called to do the, uphold the law. Things happen so fast, they may kill somebody innocently too, but those numbers will drastically go down when we take the white element out of it. And then we train our people right. And we get on the other end and treat the cause and teach our babies what to do and how to do to minimize some of those atrocities.
Whew, it's a lot, and still a whole lot more that needs to be said, and we can't do it in this time frame.
That's for sure. Can't fix it all in one night.
But it's definitely been fruitful. I just can't reiterate enough for you guys to go out and get this book, share it with your young, especially your young boys, middle school and adult men, women. Like I said, what I appreciate most about this book is it's kind of like kickstarted me back into reading. Like I said, I got all kind of books around me. I order books all the time. I love to read, but I've been distracted, and this kind of kickstarted me, and I appreciate that so much. And I know this is going to be our last meeting. We talked about so much, and I just appreciate your insight and your willingness to make change. There's a saying that goes something like, you live in this world, you either just exist or you want to leave, you want to make a difference, right? Mm-hmm. And so, bless you for making the choice to want to make a difference rather than just be here. And I think that's more important than anything. And just using your street knowledge, another one of your quotes before we get up out of here, you said that you came from the, the University of,
oh yeah, I'm a graduate of Mandatory University USA. I have a master's degree in pain and suffering, and a doctor's degree in streetology.
Right. So you can definitely relate and understand where a lot of our people are coming from. Thank you, Rita, who says, great job. I appreciate you. Listen, thank you all on Facebook and YouTube for watching In Your Ear Radio, supporting and chatting. It means so much to me to be here with you. Your presence is my present. I don't need anything monetary, just to be amongst you all and share knowledge and information we can exchange. And to you, Walter D. Smith, I'm just so glad that I was listening to one of my favorite radio shows on that day, and your voice came across in my earbud, and your story just compelled me, and I had to reach out to you, not knowing if you would, follow up, but you did, and it just, I think it's just the beginning of, something great, and I just appreciate.
If there was a simple solution to the things that we've discussed tonight, they would have been fixed before tonight. That's for sure. And the work that you've chosen to do, my sister, even in having someone like me on, is a major step in the right direction, because we, again, I've said it now for the fourth time, we are ostracized, we are vilified, we are castigated, and we have been totally rejected, those of us that have reformed ourselves. And we have a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge. We have a wealth of material. I'm another Malcolm. I formed myself after Malcolm. As soon as I got to prison, I did with Malcolm. I studied etymology. I studied words like Malcolm. I read the dictionary from the beginning to the end, just like Malcolm. Only difference between Malcolm and I did not worship no man. And that's what caused him to lose his life, because of his religious beliefs.
Coming up with all these topics that take us to another 2 hours. You think Malcolm actually worshiped another man?
Well, yes, his love for the Honorable Elijah. My stuff gets real deep because I studied him inside and out. It was through his relationship with Honorable Elijah Muhammad that cost him his life. If anybody do the research and see what his final demise was. And a brother just did a real nice documentary that explained all that. And I was even yes. And that was his downfall. And again, we could talk, I'm not going to mention what I saw to be the problem, but no. And let me just use another example. I was you got to side with someone when you get to prison, because racial stuff is real thick in prison. So obviously I was real close to the Islamic community, but I never became a Muslim. I'm not a Muslim, but I studied the Holy Quran. And when I studied history, there were a lot of things that I did not like about our experience. And that's what kept me from declaring myself to be a Muslim. And I also removed myself from calling myself a Christian, so to speak. Although if, I do go to church, I typically go to a Christian church. And every now and then I will go to Juma. I will go to Islamic prayers. I've practiced that since I've been out, because one of my best friends is a Muslim. So, but these are things that make us have a good balance. But yes, Malcolm, in my opinion, he just, in forming myself after Malcolm, he was a pimp, he was a pusher, he was a junkie, he was a dope dealer, he was a robber, he committed burglaries. I never did a lot of stuff that Malcolm did, but what the Nation of Islam did for a lot of black men is straighten up black men in and out of prison, and I'm one of them. Okay, and for me, I felt it necessary to come out here and not necessarily worship any kind of man, but try to balance myself to have an impact in all aspects of life. Thank you, sister, for having me. I've enjoyed it. And I will ask that your listeners, if they make a request for me to come back, I'd like to come back. If not, I'm just keep moving myself through life the way that I do and try to have an impact wherever I can, ever how I can. God bless you all.
There was also a couple of comments. I don't know if you have time to take notes, but it's in the chat, and I'll share with you later if you like. But shout out to Kira on Facebook, and we were discussing, how you were having trouble, people having, with people in prominent positions not being willing to receive the message that you have for the community. She offered, John Ponder of Hope for Prisoners. So that's someone she suggested you could reach out to, John Ponder of Hope for Prisoners. Also, you can contact Dr. Linda Young at the Clark County School District Trustee Board. She's a member, as well as Tamika Henry. And those might be some people that you can meet up with and be able to, do your public speaking and offer some type of curriculum to help our boys, especially with our community as a whole. So
I saw a lot of their inscriptions when they came across, and I hope that when we do another show that we can bring them into the conversation as well, because that's how my speaking business has proliferated, and that's how I proliferated when I got out of prison. Every opportunity you get, that's how I met you. It shall proliferate and grow into something bigger, and I'd like to ingratiate these different people that they're mentioning, and I wrote one down, but I'll rely on you when we get off the air to get the others, because that's what it's going to take. This is just the start. We're just scratching the surface of the cultivation.
That's right. We just scratched the surface, y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're just now starting to just break the ground to get the rocks and all the impurities out of the way before we can even drop the seed. We haven't even got to that and put the dirt back on top of the seed. We haven't even, we're just getting started. So I want to thank everyone who joined in and the information that they're sharing, because yes, I'm looking to align myself with people so we can make a difference. And that's the beautiful thing that technology and Latoya, people like you are allowing, is we're going to get this work done. It's hard work. And if it were easy, everyone would do it, just like dieting and modifying the body. And again,
Ooh, don't talk about dieting. That's a trigger word for me.
yes, yes. All my successes, even in the business that I run now, I have 4 people that I rely on. And when I won all my titles, I was smart enough to get 4 people because, again, everything is relevant. If you've noticed now, the one consistency that I've had where I speak about spirituality, if the things of balance in life, because we can all,
I know all about balance.
Sure. Well, we can all agree to disagree, or we can all have different concepts. But if we balance it out, because everyone has value to what they bring to the table, we just have to balance it. And once we balance it, anything that I want to do in life, I can do because I've learned the formula to win. You just find 4 people smarter than you, and then you put the energy on it. And those 4 people will get you to the finish line. So I'm glad to be here. And I thank the people who have weighed in. And I hope that we can do this all again in the near future.
So you guys, you can pick up the book to learn more about Walter D. Smith. The book is called Street Soldiers at www.walterdsmith.com. You will not be disappointed. Again, thank you so much. Listen, next week, we're going to have an After Dark show. So y'all know how we get with the After Dark. And we're going to have a male poly couple on them. You know, I'm just letting y'all, giving y'all a little taste. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation with y'all, my Day One crew. I love you guys, and thank you for, joining us today. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.